My name is Ava Carter. I'm 23 years old, and if you had asked anyone in my hometown who I was a few years ago, they probably would have shrugged and said something like, "Oh, that girl." Not the smart one, not the hardworking one, just the girl who never turned out right. At least, that's the story my father liked to tell. He told it at family dinners, he told it at church, he told it to neighbors standing in our driveway while pretending to laugh about it. My daughter, he'd say, shaking his head like it was some kind of joke, she's got big dreams, but zero discipline. People would chuckle politely, and every time they did, something inside me cracked a little more. But here's the thing about stories people repeat long enough. Eventually, they start believing them, even if they're not true. Before I go any further, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had someone decide who you were before you even had the chance to prove them wrong? Like the verdict was already written, and you were just living inside it. If that's ever happened to you, then you're going to understand this story better than most. And if stories like this mean something to you, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Not because I need it, but because somewhere out there is someone else who needs to hear this tonight. All right, let's rewind a little, back to when everything actually started. I was 16 the last time my family felt like a family. My mom, Laura Carter, used to say our kitchen table was the most important place in the house. Not the living room, not the fancy dining room we barely used, the kitchen table, because that's where real life happened. Homework, arguments, late-night talks. She worked as a nurse at the county hospital, 12-hour shifts, always tired. But somehow she still found the energy to sit across from me every night and ask about my day like it actually mattered. "You're going to do something big one day," she used to tell me while flipping through my report cards. I'd laugh. "Like what?" She'd smile. "I don't know yet, but it's going to surprise people." My father, meanwhile, had a very different opinion. Robert Carter believed life was simple. You worked, you didn't complain, and you didn't chase ridiculous dreams. That's the exact phrase he used. Ridiculous dreams. He worked as a regional manager for a shipping company. Decent money, nice truck, the kind of guy who believed providing financially meant he didn't have to provide emotionally. Mom used to smooth things over whenever we argued. "She's young," she'd say gently. "Let her figure things out." But the truth is, she was the glue holding everything together. And the moment she was gone, everything fell apart. It happened on a rainy Thursday afternoon. A car accident. A drunk driver ran a red light. Just like that, my entire world split in half. People always say time slows down when something terrible happens. They're wrong. Time doesn't slow down. It disappears. The funeral passed in a blur of black clothes and quiet voices. Neighbors bringing casseroles, relatives I barely knew hugging me like we were close, and my father standing near the casket like a statue, silent, cold, distant. A week later, he walked into my room holding a cardboard box. "Your mother handled the emotional stuff," he said flatly, "but things are different now." He set the box on my bed. Inside were cleaning supplies, a grocery list, and a handwritten schedule. "You're old enough to start pulling your weight." I remember staring at that box for a long time, because in that moment, I realized something. My mother had been protecting me from more than I ever understood. From that day forward, the house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a workplace. Dinner had to be ready at 6, laundry on Saturdays, cleaning every Sunday morning. If I complained, my father had one response. "You think life's supposed to be easy?" School became my escape, the one place where I still felt like myself. I studied harder than anyone I knew, not because I loved homework, but because every A felt like a tiny act of rebellion. Every good grade proved something my father insisted wasn't true, that I was capable. By senior year, my guidance counselor called me into her office. She slid a college application across the desk. "Have you ever considered applying to Westbridge University?" she asked. I laughed out loud. Westbridge was one of the top schools in the state. Students from wealthy families went there, not girls who worked part-time at a diner after school. But she leaned forward and said something that changed my life. "Ava, you're one of the smartest students I've ever worked with. Don't let your circumstances decide your future." So I applied. Late at night, after finishing homework, after washing dishes, after everyone else was asleep. And 3 months later, an email arrived. I opened it while sitting in the parking lot of the diner during my break. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. "Congratulations. You've been accepted." Not only accepted, but awarded a full academic scholarship. I cried in that parking lot for 20 straight minutes, not because I was sad, but because for the first time since my mom died, something good had happened. When I told my father that night, he barely looked up from the television. "College is expensive," he muttered. "I have my own bills." "I got a scholarship," I said quietly. He shrugged. "Then I guess you're on your own." And just like that, I was. What my father didn't realize was that being on my own was exactly what I needed, because the moment I stepped onto that college campus, my life finally started moving forward. But the story my father told about me, the one where I was the irresponsible daughter who couldn't handle real life, that story didn't stop. In fact, it got worse. By the time I graduated 4 years later, he was still telling everyone the same thing. That girl wouldn't have survived without my money. The crazy part? He believed it. Which brings us to the day everything finally exploded. Graduation day. 2,000 people in an auditorium, my name about to be called, and my father sitting in the front row, ready to take credit for a life he had nothing to do with building. What he didn't know was that someone else in that room already knew the truth, and in less than 10 minutes, his entire story was about to collapse, right there, in front of everyone.